She didn't know that slapping a stranger in front of her mother's restaurant would change her family forever and destroy the reputation of the most feared man in Seoul. Her family owed a debt, and when she was humiliated for it, she didn't think twice. She slapped the man responsible without even knowing his name. And what she really didn't know was that the man everyone in Seoul feared had just fallen for the one woman who wasn't afraid of him. If you love slow burn stories where fire meets ice, hit that subscribe button right now. You do not want to miss this. Like this video if you're already invested, and stay till the end, because this story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. The restaurant had survived worse days, or so Elena kept telling herself every morning as she unlocked the front door before sunrise. It was a small place, tucked between a laundromat and a shuttered bookstore, the kind of restaurant that ran on regulars rather than crowds. Old men who came for the same bowl of soup every Tuesday. A group of university students who claimed her mother's kimchi stew cured hangovers. A quiet rhythm that had sustained the family for over a decade. 8 months ago, that rhythm had cracked. A burst pipe had flooded the kitchen just as tax season drained what little savings they had left, and her mother, too proud to ask relatives for help and too desperate to wait for a bank's slow approval, had turned to a lender whispered about only in hushed tones at the market. Men who moved through the neighborhood like a held breath, whose names alone could empty a room. At the time, it had felt like the only door still open. Now, it felt like the beginning of the end. Elena watched her mother grow smaller with each passing month, apologizing to suppliers who'd once respected her, stretching everyone across bills that multiplied faster than the restaurant's earnings. Her mother never spoke about the debt aloud, not even to Elena, but she saw it in the way her hands trembled over the old cash register at closing time, in the prayers murmured under her breath before bed. "We'll figure it out," Elena told her one night, though she didn't know how. Her mother only smiled the tired smile she'd perfected over the months. "You worry about school and work, not this." But Elena couldn't stop worrying. That afternoon, during the busiest hour of the lunch rush, the door swung open hard enough to rattle the bell above it, and 2 men walked in like they already owned the place. They didn't glance at the menu chalked on the wall. They didn't wait to be seated. They moved straight toward the counter, and within seconds, every conversation in the restaurant died. "You're behind again," the taller one said loudly, deliberately, so every customer could hear. 2 weeks now. Elena's mother's hands stilled over the register. "I have it. I just need until Friday." "Friday?" the shorter man repeated, laughing, glancing back at his partner. "You hear that? Friday." He turned, taking in the modest dining room. The mismatched chairs, the faded paint. Whole place is a charity case. Should have shut down months ago. He reached out and swept his arm across a display stand near the counter, sending a tray of rice cakes clattering to the floor, scattering across the tile. Elena's mother knelt immediately, gathering them with shaking hands, murmuring apologies to no one in particular. Something in Elena snapped. She stepped around the counter and placed herself between her mother and the men, voice trembling, not from fear, but from a fury she'd never felt so completely before. "Get out," she said. "Now." The taller man smirked, unbothered, and pulled out his phone. "Boss might want to see this himself," he said, already dialing. "He'll enjoy watching a girl like her get put in her place." 15 minutes felt like an hour. The restaurant sat frozen, customers pretending to eat, no one daring to leave, no one daring to speak. Then the door opened again, and this time, the air itself seemed to shift. He walked in without urgency, dressed like a man who had never once been kept waiting in his life. Tailored dark coat, silver-toned hair swept back, an expression carved from something colder than stone. Conversations that had already died seemed to die again, deeper this time. Even his own men straightened. He looked at the rice cakes scattered across the floor, at Elena's mother, still kneeling, and he said something under his breath. Quiet, precise, cruel enough that Elena didn't need to hear the words clearly to understand their intent. She didn't think. She crossed the room in 3 steps and slapped him across the face. The sound cracked through the silence like something breaking. Behind him, one of his men reached instinctively toward his jacket. But the man himself didn't move. He simply lifted a hand, stopping his men cold, and turned his face back toward her slowly, a strange, unreadable calm settling over his features. As though nothing like this had ever happened to him before. Because it hadn't. He left without a word, his men trailing behind him in stunned silence, and the restaurant exhaled all at once. Customers murmuring, some quietly praising Elena's nerve, most looking at her like she'd just signed her own death sentence. Her mother didn't stop shaking for the rest of the evening. "Do you understand what you've done?" she whispered once the last customer had gone, gripping Elena's hands. "Men like that don't forget. They don't forgive." Elena didn't sleep that night, replaying the sound of her palm against his face, waiting for the retaliation she was certain would come by morning. Men returning to smash windows, to demand more than money this time. But morning came quietly instead. And with it, a phone call from the loan office that made her mother go completely still. The receiver nearly slipping from her hand. The debt, all of it, had been cleared. No explanation given. No warning. Simply gone, as if it had never existed. Elena should have felt relief. Instead, dread settled low in her stomach, because she understood instinctively that nothing about this had come without a price, even if she couldn't yet see what that price would be. 3 days passed before she saw him again. Not at the restaurant, but at the market, early morning, mist still clinging low over the stalls. She was haggling over the price of vegetables when she felt it. That same shift in the air, conversations dimming, people instinctively stepping aside. He stood a few stalls away, hands in his coat pockets, watching her the way one might study something rare and unexpected in a place it didn't belong. "Are you following me?" she asked, straightening. "I own half the buildings on this street," he said simply. "I could ask you the same." "You cleared my mother's debt," she said. "Why?" For a moment, he didn't answer, something flickering behind his usually unreadable expression. "Because no one has spoken to me the way you did in a very long time," he said finally. "I found I didn't dislike it." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." He left before she could press further, disappearing into the crowd as effortlessly as he'd arrived. Elena stood there long after he'd gone, vegetables forgotten in her hands, trying to convince herself the unsettling flutter in her chest was nothing more than nerves. It wasn't just nerves. Over the following days, small, quiet changes rippled through her family's life. The supplier who'd once overcharged them out of spite suddenly lowered his prices without explanation. The landlord, who'd been threatening to raise the rent for months, quietly let the matter drop. None of it was traceable directly to him. But Elena had stopped believing in coincidence the moment her mother's debt disappeared overnight. She saw him twice more that week, each time appearing as though by chance. Once outside a bookstore, where he lingered a beat too long before offering a small nod and walking on. Once at a red light, his car stopped beside the bus she rode home on, his eyes finding her through the window as though he'd known exactly which bus she'd take. Her mother noticed the shift in her too. The distracted pauses, the way Elena's gaze lingered too long on nothing in particular. "You're thinking about him," she said one evening, not as a question. Elena didn't deny it. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." Her mother studied her carefully before answering. "Feel honestly," she said, "but feel carefully too. Men don't change for people. They change for people who make them want to be different. If that's what this is, you'll know soon enough." The next time he appeared, it wasn't by coincidence, and he didn't pretend otherwise. He arrived at the restaurant just after closing, alone. No car waiting outside, no men trailing behind him. Elena was wiping down the last table when the bell above the door chimed, and she turned to find him standing just inside the entrance, almost hesitant, as if unsure of his welcome. "You could have called," she said, though she made no move to ask him to leave. "I don't have your number," he admitted. "I never asked for it. It didn't feel right, taking something you hadn't offered." Something about the admission caught her off guard. A man who commanded fear from an entire district, who could have obtained her number, her address, her entire life story within the hour if he wanted, had chosen instead to wait for her to offer it herself. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I wanted to see you somewhere that wasn't shaped by what I am," he said. "Somewhere that was yours." Elena set down her cloth, studying him. There was no arrogance in his posture tonight. None of the coldness that had first walked through her mother's door weeks earlier. Just a man standing quietly in a nearly empty restaurant, waiting to see if she'd let him stay. "Sit down," she said finally, "since you're here." He seemed almost surprised by the invitation, but took the seat across from her without hesitation. For the first time since the slap that had upended both their lives, they sat across from each other not as enemies, not as feared man and defiant woman, but simply as two people testing the edges of something neither fully understood. They talked for hours. Not about debts, not about fear, not about the empire he ran, but about smaller things. Her mother's recipes, altered slightly with each generation, passed down like inheritance. His childhood, brief and guarded, offering only fragments of a life spent learning to survive rather than live. A father who ruled through fear and taught his son to do the same. Elena found herself laughing at something he said, an unguarded, easy sound that surprised them both, and she realized, watching the corner of his mouth lift in response, that it was the first time she'd heard him laugh at all. By the time he rose to leave, the restaurant lights dimmed low around them. Something fragile had settled between them. Quiet, uncertain, the kind of thing that could easily be crushed if either of them pushed too hard, too fast. At the door, he paused. "Can I see you again?" Elena hesitated, every warning her mother had given her rising quietly to the surface. But beneath it, something steadier had begun to take root. "Yes," she said. "You can." Neither of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. Phone raised, capturing the entire exchange from a distance. In the weeks that followed, the distance between them closed steadily, one small moment at a time. He began showing up more often, no longer concerned with being seen. Walking her home after closing, sitting across from her mother over tea, and letting himself be teased about his stiff posture, laughing more freely each time, as though relearning a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Her mother, though still wary, softened toward him slowly, watching the way his shoulders relaxed around her daughter, the way his eyes followed Elena across a room like he still couldn't quite believe she'd chosen to let him stay. One evening, standing on the same balcony where he'd first admitted he didn't know what he wanted from her, the city lights spread out beneath them, he finally said it plainly. "I love you," he said, quieter than she'd ever heard him speak. "I don't know how to be the man I'm supposed to be and love you at the same time, but I don't want to keep choosing between them." Elena didn't answer right away. She stepped closer instead, close enough to see the uncertainty flickering behind his composed expression. The same uncertainty she'd carried since the night she first slapped him. "Then don't," she said softly. "Let me be the one thing in your life that isn't about fear." He reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, as though asking permission with the gesture itself. She didn't pull away. And when he leaned down and kissed her, gently, hesitantly at first, then with a quiet certainty neither of them had expected to feel, the city lights blurred around them, and for a moment, neither the fear he carried nor the danger surrounding her mattered at all. For the first time in longer than either of them could remember, they let themselves believe it might be that simple. It wasn't. 2 nights later, Seoul, Jin-ho's second-in-command, sat alone in his office with a photograph glowing on his phone screen. Jin-ho leaving Elena's restaurant, unguarded, smiling in a way none of his men had ever seen. Seoul had watched the changes accumulate for weeks now. Debts quietly forgiven. Fear loosening at the edges of an organization built entirely on its absence, a boss distracted by a woman who had struck him publicly and walked away untouched. That night, He gathered the senior men around a table in a dim, windowless room, sliding his phone across the surface so they could see the image for themselves. "He's distracted," Sang Cheol said, "and distraction makes him vulnerable. Before our rivals find her and use her against him, we remind him where his priorities should lie." No one at the table objected. Miles away, unaware of the storm quietly gathering around her, Elena stood in her mother's kitchen, smiling faintly to herself, replaying the memory of the night before, still unable to fully believe that the most feared man in Seoul had somehow become the softest part of her life. But love wasn't the only thing growing in the shadows around them, so was betrayal, and it was already closing in. The days that followed felt, to Elena, like the calm laid over something she couldn't yet see. Jin-ho came by more often now, no longer bothering to hide it, and for the first time since the debt collectors had first walked through her mother's door, Elena allowed herself to believe that maybe the worst of it was over. She didn't know about the meeting in the windowless room. She didn't know that her name had already begun circulating among men who saw her not as a person, but as a weakness to be exploited. Sang Cheol moved carefully in the days after that meeting, saying nothing to Jin-ho directly, watching instead. The way Jin-ho now left the office early, the way he'd stopped attending certain collections himself, delegating what he once handled personally. To the other men, it looked like distraction. To Sang Cheol, it looked like opportunity. He began making quiet moves of his own, reaching out to men in rival organizations who had once feared crossing Jin-ho's territory, hinting, carefully, that the empire's foundation wasn't as solid as it appeared. He didn't need to say much. Whispers of Jin-ho's softness had already begun spreading on their own, carried by the same gossip that had once spread news of Elena's slap. It was Jin-ho's own men who first sensed something shifting. Smaller debts collected less efficiently. A rival gang, testing boundaries they'd never dared test before, moved into a corner of Jin-ho's territory that had gone unpatrolled for 2 nights straight. When Jin-ho finally addressed it, calling the senior men together, he sensed the change immediately. The way certain eyes refused to meet his, the way Sang Cheol answered his questions a beat too slowly, too carefully. "Is there something I should know?" Jin-ho asked, his voice carrying the same cold authority it always had, though something in his gut told him the question mattered more than he was letting on. "Nothing you need concern yourself with," Sang Cheol said smoothly. "We're handling it." Jin-ho let it go, though the unease lingered. That evening, he mentioned it briefly to Elena, careful not to worry her with details she didn't need to carry. But Elena, sharper than he gave her credit for, noticed the tension behind his eyes, the way his hand lingered a moment too long around his phone. "Something's wrong," she said, not as a question. "It's nothing," he said. "Business. You're a bad liar for a man everyone's supposed to be afraid of." He almost smiled at that, despite himself. "There are people in my organization," he admitted finally, "who don't agree with how I've been handling things lately." "Because of me," Elena said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Because of a lot of things. You're simply the easiest thing to point to." Elena sat with that for a long moment. The warmth of the last few weeks suddenly edged with something colder. "What happens if they push back?" "They won't," he said, though the certainty in his voice felt thinner than it had weeks earlier. "I've handled worse." But that night, walking home alone after leaving her at the restaurant, Jin-ho found himself replaying every quiet glance exchanged around that table, every hesitation in Sang Cheol's voice. He had built his reputation on being unshakable, unreadable, untouchable. For the first time since inheriting the organization from his father, he felt something close to real uncertainty. 2 days later, the first Real warning arrived. Not aimed at Jin-ho directly, but at Elena. She was closing the restaurant alone, her mother having left early for a doctor's appointment, when a man she didn't recognize stepped through the door just as she reached for the lock. He wasn't one of Jin-ho's usual men. His face was unfamiliar, his presence deliberately casual in a way that put her instantly on edge. "Kitchen's closed," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm not here to eat. the man said, glancing around the empty restaurant. Just wanted to see the woman who's got Seoul's most feared man so distracted these days. His eyes settled on her, cold and assessing. Must be something special about you. Elena's hand tightened around the cloth she was holding. I think you should leave. The man smiled, unbothered, taking a slow step closer. You should be more careful, he said quietly. Men like him don't stay soft forever. And when he finally remembers who he's supposed to be, people like you tend to get left behind. Or worse. He left before she could respond, the bell above the door chiming cheerfully behind him, utterly incongruent with the fear now settling cold and heavy in her chest. She didn't tell her mother what happened. But that night, for the first time since everything between her and Jin-ho had begun, Elena found herself wondering if her mother's warning had been right all along, that whatever this was between them, it was never going to be simple, and it was never going to be safe. Elena said nothing to Jin-ho for 2 full days. She told herself it was because she didn't want to worry him, but the truth sat closer to fear, a quiet, creeping suspicion that if she spoke the encounter aloud, it would become undeniably real. It was her mother who noticed first. Elena had always been careful to hide her worries, but exhaustion had worn down whatever composure she'd been holding on to, and her mother caught the way her daughter flinched at the sound of the bell above the door, the way her eyes darted too quickly toward the street outside. Someone came here, her mother said one evening, not a question, while I was gone. Elena hesitated, then finally told her everything. The stranger's face, his casual menace, the warning wrapped inside something almost like concern. Her mother's expression didn't shift into panic the way Elena expected. Instead, it hardened into something quieter, more resolved. You need to tell him, her mother said. Whatever this is between you, he needs to know his world is reaching into ours. You cannot carry this alone. That night, Elena finally told Jin-ho everything, watching his expression shift from calm to something colder and more dangerous than she'd seen since the day they'd met. His jaw tightened, his hands curling briefly into fists before he forced them still. Why didn't you tell me immediately? He asked, voice low. Because I didn't want you doing something reckless, she admitted. And because some part of me was hoping if I ignored it, it would go away. It won't, he said. Not now. He spent the following days trying to trace the man's identity, quietly reaching out to contacts he trusted. Though trust itself had become something he could no longer take for granted within his own organization. He noticed, too, how certain men avoided his gaze more than usual, how information that once flowed easily to him now arrived late, incomplete, or not at all. Seoul, watching Jin-ho's growing unease from the shadows of his own quiet campaign, allowed himself the smallest satisfaction. The plan was working exactly as intended. Not through open confrontation, which would have united the organization behind Jin-ho out of loyalty or fear, but through erosion, slow and deliberate, until Jin-ho's authority crumbled from the inside without anyone being able to point to a single moment where it began. Jin-ho, for his part, remained unaware of exactly how deep the betrayal ran, though instinct told him it reached further than a single disgruntled subordinate. He doubled the men watching Elena's restaurant, though he did it quietly, careful not to alarm her mother further than she already was. Elena, meanwhile, found herself caught between 2 instincts pulling in opposite directions. The urge to run from a danger that had nothing to do with her original life, and a stubborn refusal to let fear dictate her choices the way it had dictated so much of her mother's life already. I'm not leaving, she told Jin-ho firmly, when he gently suggested she stay somewhere safer for a while. I didn't back down the first day I met you, and I'm not backing down now. He studied her for a long moment, something between admiration and fear flickering behind his eyes. Fear not of her, but for her. You have no idea what you're choosing to stay for, he said quietly. I know exactly what I'm choosing, she said. You. It was during this fragile, tense standoff between them that Seoul made his next move. Not against Jin-ho directly, but against the one piece of leverage he knew would finally force Jin-ho's hand. Late one night, while Elena's mother walked the short distance home from a neighbor's house, a car pulled quietly to the curb beside her. The car's door opened before Elena's mother had time to react. Two men stepped out, unfamiliar, moving with the same casual menace the stranger at the restaurant had carried days earlier. She recognized instantly that this wasn't a robbery, wasn't random. The way they positioned themselves on either side of her, blocking any clear path to escape, told her exactly what this was. "You're going to come with us," one of them said quietly. "No trouble, and nothing happens to you." She didn't scream. Years of quiet survival had taught her that panic rarely saved anyone. Instead, she let them guide her into the car, memorizing every detail she could. The streets they turned down, the faint scar along one man's jaw, the smell of cigarette smoke embedded in the upholstery. Anything that might matter later. They didn't take her far. A quiet warehouse near the docks, dimly lit, isolated enough that no one would hear if she screamed after all. Seoul was waiting when they arrived, standing with the same stiff, controlled posture he carried everywhere, studying her the way a man studies a tool he intends to use carefully. "You must be Elena's mother," he said. "I apologize for the inconvenience. This won't take long, provided your daughter's friend makes the right decision." Elena's mother said nothing, refusing to give him the satisfaction of fear, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Meanwhile, across the city, Jin-ho received the call he'd been dreading without fully realizing he'd been dreading it. Elena's voice on the other end was tight with barely controlled panic. "My mother went to the neighbor's house an hour ago. She's not answering her phone. She should have been home by now." Jin-ho didn't need more information than that. He knew, with the same instinctive certainty that had once told him something was shifting within his organization, exactly what this meant, and precisely who was responsible. He arrived at Elena's restaurant within 20 minutes, his composure cracking at the edges in a way she'd never witnessed before. "This is my fault," he said. "I should have protected her the moment you told me about the man who came here." "Where is she?" Elena demanded, refusing to fall apart, refusing to let panic overtake the sharp focus she needed now more than ever. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I intend to find out." He made calls that night to men he no longer fully trusted, each conversation a careful test, watching for hesitation, for the wrong kind of silence. It was one of the newer, younger men. Someone who still held loyalty to Jin-ho's father's memory rather than to Seol's growing influence, who finally gave him the answer, quiet and afraid, but honest. "The warehouse by the docks," the young man said. "Seol's there. I don't know what he wants, but he's not acting alone anymore. Half the senior men are with him now." Jin-ho's expression hardened into something Elena hadn't seen since the very first day they'd met. The coldness she'd once feared now aimed entirely at the men who had betrayed him. "Stay here," he told her. "No," Elena said immediately. "She's my mother. I'm coming. It's not safe." "Neither is standing here waiting," she snapped. "I didn't survive slapping the most feared man in Seoul just to sit quietly while people I love get hurt." Jin-ho looked at her for a long moment, something between fear and fierce admiration passing behind his eyes, before finally nodding once, sharply. "Then stay close to me, no matter what happens." They left together into the night, toward the warehouse where Elena's mother waited, unaware that the confrontation about to unfold would determine not just her freedom, but the entire future of the empire Jin-ho had inherited, and the fragile, unlikely love he'd found in the middle of it. The warehouse sat quiet and dark against the waterline, the kind of stillness that felt deliberate rather than empty. Jin-ho parked several blocks away, refusing to announce their arrival with headlights sweeping across the entrance, and the two of them approached on foot through the shadows, Elena's heartbeat pounding louder than her footsteps. "Whatever happens in there," Jin-ho said quietly, pausing just outside the loading dock entrance, "I need you to trust me, even if it looks like I'm doing something you don't understand." Elena wanted to ask what that meant, but there wasn't time. He pushed the door open, and they stepped into the dim interior together. Sang Cheol was waiting, unsurprised, as though he'd expected exactly this outcome all along. Elena's mother sat in a chair near the center of the room, unharmed but frightened, flanked by two of Sang Cheol's men. The moment Elena saw her, she started forward instinctively, but Jin-ho's hand closed firmly around her wrist, holding her back. "Let her go," Jin-ho said, his voice carrying none of the warmth Elena had grown used to over the past weeks. Only the cold, commanding authority that had first walked through her mother's restaurant door. "That depends," Sang Cheol said calmly, "on whether you're ready to remember who you are." "This isn't about who I am," Jin-ho said. "It's about what you think you're entitled to take from me." Sang Cheol's expression flickered, something like genuine frustration breaking through his usual composure. "Your father built something out of fear because fear is the only thing that keeps men like us alive. You've spent months undoing that, forgiving debts, softening collections, distracted by a woman who struck you in front of witnesses and should have paid for it immediately. The men have noticed. Our rivals have noticed. If you don't correct this yourself, I will. By kidnapping an innocent woman?" Jin-ho said. "That's not correction. That's exactly the kind of weakness my father operated on. The belief that fear was the only language worth speaking. It's the only language that's kept this organization alive for 20 years. It's the only language that made me hate my own life for just as long," Jin-ho said, quieter now, though no less firm. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across Sang Cheol's face. The first crack Elena had seen in his composure since they'd arrived. But it vanished quickly, replaced by resolve. "Sentiment doesn't change what needs to happen here," he said, nodding toward the men flanking Elena's mother. "Release her mother when he agrees to step down. Quietly. No further embarrassment for the organization." Elena felt Jin-ho's hand tighten around her wrist, though his expression remained carefully unreadable. "And if I refuse?" Sang Cheol's silence answered more clearly than words could have. Elena couldn't hold back any longer. "This isn't about him stepping down," she said, stepping forward despite Jin-ho's attempt to keep her still. "This is about you wanting his position for yourself. Don't dress it up as loyalty to an organization you're perfectly happy to betray the moment it benefits you." Sang Cheol's eyes narrowed toward her, cold and assessing. "You should have stayed out of this. You're the reason we're here at all." "No," Elena said, refusing to back down despite every instinct telling her to be afraid. "I'm the reason he finally started acting like someone worth following instead of someone everyone's just afraid of." The room fell into tense silence, broken only when one of the younger men flanking Elena's mother shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward Sang Cheol as though seeking reassurance he no longer fully felt. Jin-ho seized the moment. "Ask yourselves," he said, addressing the men directly rather than Sang Cheol, "who you're really protecting here. An organization my father built on fear, or one man's ambition to replace me before I even had the chance to prove what leading differently might actually look like." The uncertainty rippling through the room was subtle, but unmistakable. Loyalties that had seemed solid only minutes earlier began to waver visibly, and Sang Cheol, sensing the shift, understood he had only seconds left to force the outcome he wanted before it slipped entirely out of his control. "Enough talking," he said sharply, nodding toward his men. "Take them both." The room shifted instantly into chaos. Sang Cheol's men hesitated only a heartbeat before moving, but that heartbeat was enough. The younger man who'd been watching Jin-ho with quiet uncertainty stepped back instead of forward, refusing the order, and his hesitation rippled through the others standing near him. Jin-ho moved first, pulling Elena behind him as one of Sang Cheol's men lunged. Years of living inside an organization built on violence meant Jin-ho knew exactly how to end a fight quickly. A sharp block, a controlled strike, and the man crumpled to the floor before he'd even finished reaching for him. Another hesitated, glancing at Sang Cheol for direction that no longer came with the same certainty it once had. "Stand down," Jin-ho said, his voice cutting through the room. Not loud, but absolute. All of you. This ends now. Sang Cheol's composure finally shattered. You'll destroy everything my loyalty built. Your loyalty built nothing, Jin-ho said. It built fear, and fear only lasts as long as no one's brave enough to challenge it. He glanced, briefly, at Elena. I learned that the day she slapped me in front of a room full of people too afraid to breathe. Sang Cheol lunged toward Jin-ho in one final, desperate move, but Jin-ho was faster. Years of restraint giving way to something sharp and decisive. Within seconds, it was over. Sang Cheol on the ground, the remaining men standing frozen, waiting to see who would speak next. Let her go, Jin-ho said again, quieter now, nodding toward Elena's mother. The men flanking her stepped aside immediately. Elena rushed forward, pulling her mother into her arms, both of them trembling with relief. Jin-ho stood over Sang Cheol, breathing hard. The weight of everything his father had built, and everything he'd almost lost pressing down on him at once. You're finished here, Jin-ho told him. Whatever loyalty you claim to have had, you buried it the moment you touched her family. Sang Cheol said nothing, defeated, as the remaining men quietly escorted him out, no longer willing to defend a plan that had unraveled the moment it faced real resistance. The weeks that followed brought a quiet, careful rebuilding. Jin-ho restructured what remained of the organization, easing away from the practices that had defined his father's legacy, choosing loyalty built on respect over loyalty built on fear. It wasn't easy and it wasn't instant, but for the first time it felt like something entirely his own. Elena's mother, though shaken by everything that had happened, recovered fully, her fear slowly giving way to a cautious but genuine warmth toward the man who had risked everything to bring her home safely. One evening, a few weeks after the warehouse, Jin-ho came to the restaurant just before closing, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him, an unfamiliar nervousness sitting behind his usual composure. I want to take you somewhere, he said. Properly. No debts, no danger, no audience. Just us. Elena raised an eyebrow, amused by the sight of him almost fumbling over his own words. Is the most feared man in Seoul asking me on a date? I believe I am, he said. Saturday. Wear something you love. I'll handle everything else. When Saturday arrived, Elena stood in front of her mirror longer than she had in years, finally choosing a deep emerald dress she'd kept tucked away for an occasion she never imagined she'd have. Fitted, elegant, entirely unlike the aprons and modest blouses that had defined her days for so long. Her mother, watching from the doorway, pressed a hand to her chest, blinking back tears at the sight of her daughter transformed. Radiant, unburdened for the first time in longer than either of them could remember. Jin-ho picked her up himself. No driver, no men trailing behind, and when she stepped out and he saw her, the composed stillness he wore so easily cracked completely, replaced by something unguarded and stunned. You're staring, she said, echoing words from weeks earlier. I like what I'm looking at, he said, voice quieter than usual. The restaurant he took her to overlooked the same river visible from the balcony where he'd first told her he loved her. Candlelight and quiet music replacing the tension that had once defined every moment between them. They talked easily, laughed freely, the weight of everything they'd survived together settling into something softer now. Not forgotten, but no longer defining them. After dinner, they walked along the river in comfortable silence, the city lights reflecting across the water. Jin-ho stopped walking, turning to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. I spent most of my life believing love was a weakness I couldn't afford, he said. You didn't just slap that belief out of me. You replaced it with something I never thought I deserved. Elena smiled, stepping closer. Good thing I don't regret the slap, then. He laughed, the sound easy and warm, before his expression softened into something quieter, more certain. He reached up, gently cupping her face, and kissed her. Slow, deliberate, full of everything neither of them had dared to say aloud until now. Elena melted into it, arms wrapping around him, the city lights glittering around them like the entire world had finally agreed to stand still. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads resting together, Jin-ho smiled. The real, unguarded smile that no longer felt unfamiliar on his face. "So," he murmured. Every time, Elena whispered back.